Welcome to this course about learning how online small groups work. My name is Jay and I'm Saddleback's online campus pastor, and I'm really excited to talk to you about how you can bring online small groups to your campus, to your church, or to your ministry. Online small groups at Saddleback has been a tremendous way we've experienced growth in our online community and also help facilitate growth at our local campuses and locations around the world. And so in this course, we're going to talk about all sorts of things, but I really want to start off with some prayer and really pray over our time together as we kind of explore online small groups and really help paint a picture how you can bring small groups, online small groups, to your community. So let's pray. God, I thank you so much for this time together that this person or this team is spending together learning what online small groups are about. I pray, God, that you lead them and guide them on what and how online small groups could look at their ministry, at their church, and also speak through me as I share different learnings our church has experienced going through this journey of having online small groups. And I pray this in Jesus' name, amen. So I want to actually start at the beginning. Online small groups at Saddleback has been a journey. It's not something that made sense. So if you're sitting there and you're going, I don't even know what an online group would look like, don't worry. That's where we were at about 10 years ago in 2010. In 2010, when we launched online small groups, it looked very differently than it does now. A lot of things make sense, mainly because the technology has gotten a lot easier. Things like texting and video calling, there's platforms like Zoom that are just really seamless. But in 2010, a lot of that didn't exist. There were things like Skype, but there were bandwidth issues. Things were confusing, all sorts of problems occurred. And we actually created a way on our website that people could be part of a small group online. And it was on a platform. We use this platform called TalkBox. I actually don't even think that they're around anymore. But we started over 50 small groups online, and it was a journey. And now you flash forward today, and all sorts of things exist. This is actually something that I stumbled upon a couple days ago where it kind of shows the evolution of video conferencing. This is a plugin. I think it was actually a Chrome extension that you could plug it in and you could go on a video call. And the idea is that three of your friends could be on the call, and one of the windows was actually a Netflix portal, so that you could actually, it looks like you're working, but one of them is actually you're watching The Office. And so it was a way you can kind of like get away from work. So what I don't want you to do is use that and you blame it on me when you're taking this course. But you see how much we've grown. Now there's like hacks and these cool features with doing video calling and online meeting. We've grown so much over the last 10 years. And I imagine in the next 10, there's going to be even more growth and it's going to become easier and easier for people to meet. And really, that's the idea behind online groups is we just want people to meet with their friends and we want people to do life together. And it happens to be if people meet online, it's really easy and it's really seamless. And so we're going to walk through a bunch of things, but I don't want you to get too caught up in the technology. And we're going to spend some time in this course unpacking what does it actually look like to meet and what does an online group look like. But at the heart of it, we just want people to meet with their friends and guide through some conversations that we provide curriculum with. And so in this course, we're actually going to show why online small groups are valuable. We're going to talk about really what small groups are. We're not going to get too deep into this, but online small groups obviously have small groups in it. So it's important you understand actually what a small group is because you got to know what that is in order to do it online. We're going to actually talk about the strategy behind online small groups and really look at there's some things we do as like kind of as a shepherd to kind of lead people to face-to-face community. We're also going to actually get into actually show you what an actual online small group looks like an itinerary. Like they meet at 7, they end at 8, and this is what happens in between. And the idea is that we actually want to put some flesh on this so that as you're launching online small groups at your campus or at your church or part of your ministry, that you can do it with enough knowledge to actually pull it off. And then we're actually going to spend some time looking at how to have the best video call. And this is actually one of those things that I think is a barrier to get online groups off the ground is, how do you actually have a video call that's compelling? Because technology, different things can get in the way of just having a good conversation. This is like if you're talking to somebody and like, they have a button on their shirt, and all you're doing is you're looking at the button and you're looking, at their and you're like, come on, like, can you just get this? The same thing with technology. It can get in the way of having a good conversation. So we're going to spend some time there actually doing that. Then we're going to actually have a conversation around security. Now, this might be a section that potentially where you're at or what your ministry does, you might just skip this section, but we know there's a lot of people leveraging online small groups in countries where you cannot publicly worship. And we want to spend some time, what we've learned, how you can actually take security seriously, and you can create a compelling space for people who may never be able to convert because of the religion they were born into, but they can engage in online small groups. So that's a section you might skip, but I think it's a very powerful and needed one, especially in today's world. And then we're going to have some final thoughts where we're actually going to walk through some really last tips to get small groups off the ground. And we have a cool video story that we're going to show you that kind of helped us launch online small groups back in 2010. And so with that, I want to start at the beginning. Why are online small groups valuable? Like, why even do this? Because if you think about it, we do live in a digitally isolated age. Technology and social media, all these things are creating compelling things, but also there's some risk and there's some real issues. People are more lonely than ever, but they have thousands of followers on Facebook and Twitter and so forth. And so why do this? And I believe the number one reason is because we want to reach people, and we want to give them experiences of who Jesus is, and we want to go to them. And online groups are a compelling way to reach people where they're at and bring them into face-to-face community. And so number one, it really is valuable because it's a first step for people to experience your church, meaning it's a front door. Not only can they be invited to an online service if you stream something on a page, or maybe you upload your content to like a YouTube channel, but now by engaging in an online group, a friend or a member of your church can invite their neighbor into an online group, and they can not just experience content, but they actually can experience what community looks like. Now, I'm not saying online community is the fullest expression of what biblical community is. I believe that is face-to-face, but that doesn't mean something can happen online, and you can encourage people online. You can build up trust online that can lead them to coming face to face. And online small groups is a great way to extend the front door of your church. That we're not living in an age where people just come to your church just because you have a cross on top of your building. People are coming to your church because of relationships, and online groups is a great way to extend kind of the space of your church by encouraging people to launch online small groups. It's also a way to reach hurting people and give them a taste of your church in a safe way. And this is something we've really experienced online, that there are people that engage with us online because they're either in a season of life where they're grieving, or they've lost somebody, or they've been hurt by somebody at a church. And really, as they launch into online ministry and engage in an online small group, it's a way that they are putting kind of their toes in the water again and seeing what does it look like actually to engage. And the great thing is you leverage existing relationships. So somebody who's attending your church, maybe they have a neighbor who won't come to church for whatever reason, and they launch an online group for 6 weeks, and they go, hey, I'm not asking you to come here. I'm asking you to log in and be part of this online group. And so we want to encourage that and provide a way for any campus, any church, any ministry to kind of extend the reach of your church by having an online small group ministry. And then really, there's also no excuses. Is that what we have found is small groups are a great way to extend the reach of your church and provide a discipleship and fellowship strategy. But unfortunately, not everybody can just go to a group down the street or has the same schedule. Maybe they're working nights, and so they only can do groups during the day. And maybe they don't have a group right now that they can meet. And what we have found is online groups are kind of this kind of safety net where we always have an online group going on. And our online groups consist of people because it's no longer about location, but it's about time. Somebody in England can be part of a group that meets in the morning in California and vice versa. And our online groups at Saddleback consist of members from all around the world. And because of that, no matter what is happening, there is always an open online small group. And it's not about getting into a car or getting on a bus and being here at a certain time. It's just about logging on at this time. And it becomes a great kind of catch-all for anybody. And then lastly, and you might not believe this, you might go like, Jay, that doesn't make any sense. And trust me, it does. It will help you launch more physical face-to-face small groups. And we're going to talk about this in the strategy end, but what happens is people will engage in an online small group for a season. And then after about 6 to 18 months they'll go, you know what? I think I can do this in my home. And it will actually encourage people and give them an experience of like, oh, this is what a small group is. And many people will come up to me after being part of an online group for a bit and they'll go, Jay, I'm so sorry. I think it's time for me to actually launch a group in my home or a group at my workplace. And they think it's a negative. And I always tell them, no, like, this is a good thing. We want you to be in face-to-face community. And online groups is a great kind of starter phase to kind of educate people what small groups are all about. And so those are some reasons why online small groups have been valuable to us and I believe will be valuable to your ministry, to your campus, to your church. So next, what I want to do is I actually want to get into an overview of small groups, not online small groups, but just small groups. Now, I'm not going to get into a bunch of details here because small groups is a big thing. There's a lot of methodology and theology behind that. I'm going to give you a little bit of the footnotes here, like kind of high level, in high school I had Spark Notes or whatever, where you'd instead of reading the whole book, I'd just kind of give you the highlights. This is kind of the highlights. And so first off, with how small groups work, and the same thing with online small groups, is we are looking for a facilitator, not a teacher. And this is why we actually call our leaders hosts, is that they are hosting a conversation. And because we use curriculum, primarily video curriculum, we can lower the threshold of kind of the expertise of the leader, of the actual group. And so with an online group, we're just looking for somebody to facilitate a conversation because mainly they are reaching their friends. And so the reason why online small groups work is because we use this model. We're looking for a facilitator, not a teacher. And we just want you to get together with your friends and have some conversations that we help guide with curriculum we offer online. We're also really focused on circles and not rows. And so the idea is like maybe a Bible study that maybe you've been part of is, you have somebody who's like the expert. Maybe they have the ministry degree and they're sitting up front and you got everybody kind of sitting in rows and you're telling them, what the wisdom that, it's kind of like a matrix scene, they're draining everything But we're looking for circles. We're looking for everybody looking at each other. They're at equal standing. Yes, there might be people with some more experience, but there's almost like this transformation star happening where I'm learning from you, you're learning from me, and we're all learning together. And so small groups focus is not about knowledge, but it's about life change. It's about us all learning how to be better followers of Jesus. And so, yes, I might have more knowledge because of my, of my background from going to seminary, but that doesn't mean you can't teach me how to be a better husband or a better, a dad. And that's about we're all learning together. And so online small groups are the same thing. When they get together on a Skype call or on a Zoom call, is that we want everybody to talk equally. It's not about finding one expert. This is also really key. All of our online small groups and physical small groups is about expressing all 5 of the biblical purposes. And we unpack this. If you've been part of Saddleback in any way, this is super familiar. We get these purposes from the Great Commission and the Great Commandment, Matthew 22, Matthew 28, also kind of brought up again in the early church, and Paul reaffirms them. But these are the purpose of evangelism, the purpose of fellowship, of discipleship, ministry, and worship. And the idea is in a period of time, over 6 months, we want each of these purposes to be expressed. And that's even true with our online groups. And so what this really means is that it's not just about studying the Bible. That's discipleship. That's important. But it's also about worshiping together, having communion together. It's about evangelizing, actually having a session where you actually spend time learning about what does it mean to share your faith. And maybe you write down 2 names that you're praying for that you're going to invite to church. And the idea is that over a period of 6 months, we want each of these purposes to be expressed. Now, we're not looking for each purpose in every time together because it's not about equal timing, but it's about over a period of 6 months doing that. And we actually, at Saddleback, we have some tools like the health assessment, both individually and for the group. And you can find out maybe we're weak in worship or maybe we're strong in fellowship. And that might mean the next curriculum you go through needs to be a focus in one of these areas. And we help groups do that. And then the other thing is we actually have a training that we encourage all of our small group leaders, our physical small group leaders that meet face-to-face, and our online small group leaders go through, we call it LT1 for short, but it's about teaching the host, the leader of the group and the co-host on how to have a healthy group. And we encourage all of our online small group hosts to go through the same thing. And we have found time and time again is that the biggest difference between an online small group and a face-to-face small group is just the medium. It's how they meet. And the key is people are online and people are face-to-face. And so if people are face-to-face, you're going to have people problems. If people are online, you're going to have people problems online. And so it's really about just teaching them the basics of what a small group looks like. Here's some principles. And so we go through both online small groups and face-to-face small group go through the same training, LT1. And then lastly, I gotta give a plug for this. Steve is my boss, so if I don't do this, I might get in trouble. I'm just kidding. He is my boss, and I probably would get in trouble. But he wrote a book called Small Groups with Purpose. And if you really are watching this and you're like, you know what, I don't know that much about small groups, I would highly recommend check out Small Groups with Purpose, and you get a more deeper digest. Again, I just wanted to go over the highlights because this is how we do small groups at Saddleback, and this is the foundation that have made online small groups successful. So that's a quick overview of how small groups work at Saddleback. And as we move into the next section, I want to actually get into the strategy of online small groups. So let's actually get into the nitty-gritty of what does it look like to do online small groups, and what are some really important strategic thoughts. So first off, this is really big. This is the big one. Video. So typically when a small group gets together, face-to-face, you get together and you're watching something or you're reading something. And what we have found with online small groups is that there's two ways online small groups work. Is that sometimes some online groups get together and they will have, prior to the meeting, actually watch the video or the curriculum individually. And so, or they'll get together and they'll watch it real time. And so this might mean in a traditional small group, you would get in a house and you would maybe, back in the day, like when we were first starting small groups, well, I would say this is actually before me. Saddleback used to do VHSs tapes, and now they did DVDs, and now we've gone digital. But actually part of the strategy was put in the DVD and hit play. Well, because online groups, we never wanted to be in the business of shipping things. We just had something digitally that they would play. And because we don't have to now ship the DVD to every member, or the host doesn't just have the DVD, every member of the group can get access to it. And it doesn't cost us more money because it's digital. An extra play isn't more expensive. And so what we have found is most of our online small groups, what they do is that they watch the video for that week prior to meeting. So let's say they meet on Tuesday, the host will send out an email on Monday and say, hey, by the way, before Tuesday or before Thursday, whenever you meet, watch week 1 on our platform and here. And so for Saddleback, we have a platform that they log in through our Saddleback account and they get access to our curriculum, and you can choose whatever platform, or maybe it's a YouTube link or wherever it is, say, watch this video together. And so if it's a couple's online small group, the couple will, instead of watching Netflix that week, they'll watch week 1 of this series and they'll watch it together. And so when they actually meet, online small groups typically don't want to spend, burn 20, 30 minutes watching a video together on a call. It's a little weird. And so 90% of our online small groups actually watch things on demand individually. And when they meet, they jump right to conversation. And so some of our online small groups do watch videos real time together. And so what you can do on like a Zoom or a Skype, you can use a share your screen feature where you can actually share your screen. You can go to the web browser and you can watch the video together. You have to make sure you have share the audio of your computer so that people can hear it. But again, 90% of our online small groups, they watch the video prior to meeting, and when they meet, they focus on conversation. So that's a big strategy difference from face-to-face small groups and online small groups. And I've even found it's interesting. I've noticed this shift with even my own small group. I'm part of a small group with a couple of the couples, but we have like 15 kids between all of us. When we get together on Tuesday nights, we usually don't want to burn 30 minutes as the kids fight in the other room watching something. We want to jump right to a conversation. So actually, the last time we went through a big church-wide campaign here at our church, everybody watched it prior to meeting, and it worked really seamlessly. And so I've even noticed this shift here locally at our own church and a lot of our face-to-face groups where they're watching stuff on demand individually. And a lot of that shift came because we don't just have one DVD now. Everybody can get access. So the video part is a big strategy difference. Next is we've learned that people are very opinionated about technology. And that's something you have to understand in your strategy. And I got to be honest, you got to be okay with it. People are particular. I mean, if I say like it's Mac or PC and you're a Macintosh guy, you've already gone like, wait. Mac is a PC. You're like, it is a personal computer and you're already trying to fight with me about it. But that's okay. We're not in the business of trying to say, this is how you meet. We just want you to meet. And so you'll find people are more, they have preferences. They might go, oh, you know what? I love Skype because, you know, in my workplace, all I use is Skype. Or I love Zoom because I have a paid account and I use it for my small business. Technology is also geographic. There's technologies like in China, like WeChat, or internationally, WhatsApp is very familiar. Don't be in the business of saying this is how you have to meet. Just tell them they need to meet regularly with their friends and have a preferred platform like a Zoom. I would recommend is really easy to use. It does cost money, but if they want to meet on another platform, that's great. I found with workplaces, like sometimes people use like a Cisco or some kind of go to my PC, whatever it is, be okay with it. Don't get in the way and kind of forcing changes or forcing technology. Let them meet however they want to meet. So that's been something that's really important. And once we got out of that kind of like, this is how you had to kind of meet during your online group, we had this explosion because people realized we just wanted you to gather together with your friends and we didn't really care how you did it. There were some platforms that were better, but if you had a platform that worked with your friends, great. The next one is process is really important in our strategy. And I want to back up here because I think this is really important, is that our online small groups meet in all sorts of ways. But what's important is that we do shepherd them to an ultimate goal. And what that looks like is we do have a small percentage of our groups that meet text-based, that they'll actually, for example, they'll get together on a Tuesday night and somebody will post questions and they'll use like iMessenger or Slack or some kind of messaging platform and they meet. Now, we're okay with that because on the back end, what we do is we check in and monitor our groups. And we usually do that every month. We check in and go, how's your group going? We actually encourage our text-based groups to actually move to voice-based. We're like, hey, why don't you meet on a phone call or get on like an audio only type of call where you can hear each other, because phone calls are better than text messages. They might not be as convenient. You know, somebody who loves texting, I'm always like, why are you calling me? But phone calls are really good because you can hear inflections, you can hear someone's voice, you get to know somebody more. And so our text messaging type of groups, we move them to phone calls. And then our phone call kind of audio only groups, we actually eventually want to meet them, encourage them to move to videos, because videos are even more intimate because you get to see someone's face. You know, on a phone call, you might be able to like mute it and do the dishes while people are talking. But on a video call, you have to pay attention, which means it leads to better conversation. And then ultimately, even our video only calls, we eventually want to move them to face-to-face groups. And so by having this process, we're okay with allowing them to meet however they want for the first 6 months. And then what happens is, as we check in with the groups, we go, hey, you've been doing this for a season. I think it's time you move to this. And we ultimately are always moving our groups to face over a period of 6 to 18 months. Now, I'll just say this. People are part of online groups for all sorts of reasons. This is not a rigid rule where we go, in the next 6 to 18 months, you need to be in a home. No, that's not the rule. The idea is that it's heartfelt. It's understanding why are they part of online groups. And ultimately, we know that if majority of our groups, if they're part of an online group for a season, they'll start to realize, oh, you know what? I need to be in face-to-face community. And by being part of an online group for the last, couple months, it actually taught them what small groups are about. And we find that by doing this, we launch and we convert a high percentage of our online groups become physical small groups that meet in homes over a period of 18 months. But that's a very important thing, because you might go, we don't want text-based groups. Well, I think you can be okay with it if you have this kind of process where you're ultimately leading them to a better expression. And most groups do kind of upgrade to a better expression as they get to know each other. And then next, in part of the strategy is that what's really valuable is that you have to understand there's kind of two ways online small groups communicate with each other. First, there's kind of like a home-based. A home-based is like there's a way online small groups interact with each other. And so for most of our online small groups, it is a Facebook group, meaning the home base is kind of how do you talk 24/7 when the group isn't actually meeting. And so they will have like a Facebook group that will be private. It's just for it's for the 3 to 12 members of the online group. And this is how they keep up to date during the week. So some of those groups use Facebook groups. Sometimes it's just a text message thread. Again, it's depending on the people you're interacting with. My wife, her and her girlfriends, they interact on Instagram. They have like an Instagram group, and that's how they text with each other. They're not, like 4 years ago or 5 years ago, it was on Facebook. Now it's on Instagram, and that's the platform that works. And again, we don't get in the business of saying this is what Homebase needs to be. We do recommend Facebook groups because it tends to be a really good platform with a lot of features, but this tends to be the platform that they kind of interact 24/7. And this is how they say, hey, by the way, we're going to meet on Thursday at this time, or hey, by the way, I took the prayer request, I'm posting it in our group. And this is how they kind of keep up to date with them. And it tends to be a Facebook group, or internationally, WhatsApp is a great platform as well. And then there's actually a meeting space. And that means that this is actually the platform that they get on and they actually have the conversation. So one is the home base where they're interacting 24/7. And then the next is actually the actual meeting place where when they meet, where do they go? And so they might, in the Facebook group, they would put a link to Zoom. They go, hey, by the way, this is where we're meeting at 7 o'clock on Tuesday at this time, and they'll click on that, and that's actually like the live room where they interact. Or they might jump on Skype or a Google Hangout. And so these two type of places, a home group and a meeting space, are very important. So it's almost like, most of our physical small groups have a home-based type of deal. Like my group, we use a text message thread. Actually, my group is meeting later tonight, and we're on a group messaging thread, and I know where we're meeting. But instead of our meeting space isn't happening on a video platform, we're actually meeting in a living room at one of the members' houses. And so for us online groups, this is really important, understanding these two ways groups meet online. It's super valuable. And so now what I want to do is we've talked about the value of online small groups for your church, your ministry, your campus. And we've even gotten into the strategy and a little bit into kind of how small groups work generally. I want to spend some time on the actual itinerary. Like, what does it look like when somebody gets on a video call from start to end? What does an online group look like? And so this is actually a photo of an online group that's kind of have different members from all around Asia. So the host is from Singapore, and this is a photo of them meeting, and they were gracious enough to share this photo with us. Joe is a great host. But when they get together, usually what happens is, online groups, typically most of them are from an hour to hour and a half. They're not too different from a normal small group. I will say online small groups, most of them do tend to be super, I would just say efficient. They tend to be shorter because there's less linger time. They tend to be, pretty much under an hour and a half, where maybe a physical small group could go up to 2 hours, because there's conversation. I will say, as people start, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to welcome everybody, but just a tidbit, just a little bit. People are late to online small groups just like they're late to physical small groups, because again, people are people. So no matter where they're at, humans are late. It's just a thing that happens. So don't be surprised if people are like, oh man, you're getting text. The Facebook group says, oh, I'm sorry, Sally's like, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. And you might be like, wait, you didn't have to drive anywhere. It's because people just tend to be late just to things. And so you might need 5 or 10 minutes just as a buffer time. And so a group will start at 7 and you'll just welcome everybody. And when you welcome everybody, what you're trying to do is you're saying, hey, we're going to get going. This is what we're talking about this week. You might point back to something you put in the Facebook group or in the text message thread. We're going to talk about week 1. And then you move into a warm-up kind of time. And what I mean by this is you need to get everybody to talk. And I think this is something, if you've ever been on a video call or been part of an online conversation. I was just thinking about this. I've been part of online ministry for, almost 10 years, and I've been part of over 1,000 video calls. And I've been part of really weird ones, and I've been part of really great ones, and a lot of average ones. And one of the things you'll learn is you need to get everybody to learn how to talk and mute themselves. And by starting off an online group, and I will say, as online groups continue to meet, these are things that just become, very natural. And I do think over the next coming years and decades, some of these things will culturally just be things we're used to. But I will say we are still, as a society, getting kind of used to this new normal of meeting online. And so you're going to need to help people. Okay, get comfortable with talking online. And so you might have a question like, hey, so tell me about your week. We're going to go around. Everybody is going to share something. And you might say, hey, by the way, if you're not talking, just hit mute, because somebody always has some kind of, they sometimes start the dishwasher right before the group met, or, their kids are in the background. And so you just want people to feel respected if they're talking. So unmute yourself if you're not talking, unmute if you're talking. And by just getting a chance for everybody to go around and just unmute themselves and say a word, it usually just makes them feel comfortable, and it makes them feel like they can talk. It's the same thing if you're meeting in a group, face to face. I used to lead a small group with high schoolers, and high schoolers are, they've had a long day. Maybe they did their homework, or they're thinking about their homework, or they're probably not thinking about their homework. They're thinking about something else. I needed to get them to say one word. I needed them just to open their mouth one time. And the same thing with an online group, by going around on a video call and getting everybody to say one thing, like, how was your week? Or, some kind of quick thing, getting them to mute and unmute. Trust me, it leads to a better meeting time. And so after that, then optional, they might share their screen and watch the study together. Like I said, 90%, it's like 95% of our online groups, they actually have already watched the study prior to meeting. Now you might go, well, what if somebody missed it or didn't watch it? That's okay. You'll find it's, again, I've been part of small groups in all different ways. You'll always have that one person that didn't read that week. That's okay. They can still follow along. And you want to honor kind of the commitment of everybody else. And so if you have, 10 members of your online small group and 2 of them didn't watch that week, you're not going to sit there and watch the study all together and burn 20, 30 minutes. You're going to say, hey, by the way, it's okay. I'm glad you're here. You can still participate in the conversation. Just next week, this is how you watch. And so most of our groups jump right to the next part, is where they jump right to the discussion. And so when they get on the video call together, the host of the online small group goes right to the conversation. And so with us at Saddleback, normally each video curriculum has, 3 to 6 discussion questions. And so they would just go, okay, question 1 is, okay, what did you learn from, 1 Timothy in this part? When Paul said this, and they'll just go around and let everybody go through and answer each question. And they'll spend usually about 30 to 45 minutes going through the discussions. And part of this conversation time is the host is trained, and all of our small groups are trained. It's not about getting through every question and making sure everybody's heard. It's about letting the conversation kind of go about where it's going to go about. Remember, it's about life change. It's not about knowledge. We're not trying to get them to become Bible experts. We're trying to make them better followers of Jesus, better husbands, better dads, better coworkers, better neighbors. And so that means, if the online small group pauses because you find out somebody had, one of the questions stirs up a family issue, you might just pause right there and pray for them. Again, that's the same thing that happens in physical small groups, happens online. And so, but after a welcome, a warm up, and then jumping right to a conversation, usually this comes to the end of the group and you have the last 15, 20 minutes where there's prayer requests. And you'll pause, you'll have somebody else that's maybe the co-host or maybe the point prayer person will just say, hey, we got the last 15 minutes together. I want to make sure we take prayer requests. And prayer requests gives an opportunity for people to share what's on their heart or what's going on in the world. And you'll find with a lot of small group ministry, it's about just letting people be heard. You would be surprised how many people go about their day that just don't know that they're loved, that somebody actually wants to listen to them. And prayer requests are a big part to allow people to open up. And so on an online group, on a video call, or on a phone call, what will happen is somebody will just go around and will share their prayer request, and somebody will document those requests. And what's really important as you're starting off with this is you make sure that people know that these are private. We're not going to post these anywhere. You're not sharing this on your Facebook, public wall. You might put it in the Homebase, a private Facebook group or text thread so people can share. But by just going around, it's a great time for people to be heard and share. And then you end with prayer. And so usually about an hour and an hour and a half later, the online group ends. And that's what a typical online group looks. And you might be going, Jay, that's not that different from a face-to-face group. It's not. It's very similar. The main difference is that you're meeting on a digital platform and you're using something like a Zoom or a Skype or maybe on a phone call. And it's people. People are just interacting with each other, and it's a very typical encounter. The big difference is you have to get comfortable with the medium. I do think meeting on video is a little different, and if you're not experienced with it, you have to get familiar with unmuting and muting things and kind of going about that, getting over some of those technical type of issues. And the more you meet, the more people feel familiar, and it's easier to kind of lead one, participate one, and you'll find after 50 video calls, it just became very natural to meet online. And your online group hosts and members will feel that too as they kind of into third, fourth week of being part of an online small group. So I do think that this is a part that I think is important to kind of camp on for a couple minutes. Is actually, how do you have a really good video call? Because I don't know if you've been on a video call where it's clear somebody doesn't know they're on video, and or they don't realize that we can hear everything going on in their apartment or in their home. Some of those things are blockers to make people not want to come back to an online group. So maybe in a physical small group, it might be a smell. Maybe your place smells and somebody doesn't want to come back because of you forgot to take out the trash. Well, on a video call, it might be because of that annoying sound that you can't figure out, or feedback on a video call. These are all kind of new issues that you have to get over. And so I want to spend a couple minutes actually talking about how to have the best video call. And so a couple things. First off is lighting is really important. Right now, if I were to turn off the lights here, you wouldn't be able to see me, and you'd be annoyed. And we have professional lighting right now set up so you can see me. And lighting next to audio is probably one of the most important things to create a compelling call. So I want to show you some examples of this. I'm not asking you to be an expert on lighting. You might go, Jay, this graph looks very complicated. Trust me, I can't explain 70% of what's happening here. This is what I will say, is that there are different types of lights. And I actually want you, wherever you're watching at, maybe in your home, or maybe you're at work, or maybe you're at your church, look around at the bulbs that may be on right now. There's warm light, there's cool light, and there's super white, which I think is actually me. I'm super white. And usually the warm light is that yellowish look. And then the neutral light will be, that it's going to be kind of white. And then this going to be, maybe the super white will look more bluish. And some of these lights are better. I typically don't like the yellow light. And so you have yellow light on you. It kind of actually makes you look a little bit, I think it looks a little depressing sometimes. It looks a little dull and it's not as lit. And so here's some examples. Here is, this is a pet peeve of mine. People tend to, on a video call, they put the light behind them. So this is like a window behind me. And you can see the interesting thing about webcams and actually cameras is that the idea is that your camera on your computer, or if you're using an external camera, you only get as much light as how big the lens is and how much light is allowed in. And so most cameras on computers the lenses are pretty small, and not a ton of light can come in. And so you might set up a webcam, or your computer, you might go, I can see in here, this is great. Well, because God designed your eyes, and tons of light is coming into your eyes, and your little webcam can't handle that much light. And so this is what happens is the camera is trying to focus and it can't make out because there's not enough light coming into the camera, and you're actually blocking the light. And so don't put a light behind you without having light in front of you, because this is what you're going to look like. And trust me, no one's going to want to be part of an online group if you're looking like that. It's going to look a little like, what's going on? You don't know what's going on. This is actually an example of warm light and light above. So this is actually a lamp not a lamp, a light that's in my bedroom that's kind of up top, and you can see that yellowish light. How, it's okay, but it looks really dark and it looks a little, hey, honestly, I think warm light kind of sometimes looks a little sad. And so you could pick this up when you watch different TV shows from from Netflix to FX to CBS. You can see the different lighting styles. Some create better feelings just naturally. And I think you got to be aware of the lighting where you're set up to be part of your online group. And sometimes light above too will cast shadows on your eyes and will actually make you look a little tired sometimes indirectly. And you got to be aware of this. This isn't an ideal setup. This is more natural light. This was actually, I was at a coffee shop, and you can see it's pretty good. It turns out God did pretty good on the sun. It usually works pretty well. And you can see there is some, there's some other lights that are available in here. But if I was on that video call, you could see like that would go pretty good. I would have another problem. I would have sound problems maybe with them, grinding coffee, but you can see I look more natural. And then lastly, this is actually a purchase light. And so this would be like, probably the most preferred one. This is actually, I'm going to give you an example of this. This is a light setup called a ring light, where I have it off to my right. And you can see this is really good. Like I'm able to meet in a dark place. I turned off the light above. All three of those photos, except for the coffee shop, I'm all in the exact same place. And you can see, look how much of a difference good lighting does. So before your online group gets going, be aware of how you meet. And again, you're going to have to help people that are new to do this. So don't like shun somebody if they come on and they got a light behind you and you're like, you don't know what you're doing. Don't do that. Help them. Teach them on how to have a good lighting setup. Again, these things can actually get in the way of a good online group meeting. So if someone's dark, you could feel like maybe I don't know who they are. Maybe I'm not going to open up. But the better the lighting, the easier it's going to be to have a really good conversation and a good, compelling small group time online. Another thing is pick the quietest place in your house. I have a friend of mine that I meet with all the time on video calls, and he lives in New York City. And I got to tell you, like every third call, I have a siren that goes by while we're meeting, and it cracks me up because he can't control what happens on the street. But you can control the best place. So like for me, I have a couple different ways I meet, but one of them is in my kids' room. And what I do is I shut the door, and sometimes I use our bathroom fan. I'll turn it on because it kind of serves as a noise canceller. But I also don't start the dishwasher right before I meet. I make sometimes, depending on where if you have an AC unit or a heater, I might not put that on. Or I might not put my audio equipment near there, but just be aware of the noise level. Now, you might need to do like 2 or 3 times meeting to learn some of these things, because you might meet and you might go like, oh man, you know what? Our bedroom's terrible because I can hear the neighbors that we share a wall with. That's okay. Learn together and talk about that. And if somebody in your online group doesn't know that we can hear things or that noise is an issue, educate them on it. Go, hey, by the way, hey, you might not know it, but we can hear your dog in the background. He barks the whole time, and there might be a solution, there might not, but the quieter it is and the less the noise is a nuance, again, it will lead to a better online group meeting time. The other thing is you got to level your video camera. And so most of you are going to be using cameras that are built into your laptop, but this is a big issue. It can cause a lot of problems with, first off, just looking normal on an online group. It could just be awkward and somebody doesn't know like where their camera's pointed. So this is an example. This is like my computer camera pointed up. People unfortunately sometimes don't realize this is happening, and here's the deal. Nobody wants to look up your nose, okay? It's part of the reality. And I don't feel like a lot of times that this is an area you need to trim until you're on camera. And so don't point it up. The other thing, don't point it down. You might go, Jay, this is like beginner stuff. I'm going to tell you're going to have people part of your online groups that just don't know how to do this. And the more you understand how to have a good video call, you can help your host, your leaders, and all the members. And I'm not asking you to be an expert. I'm just asking you to know some basics so you can help create great experiences, because this stuff does get in the way of meeting time. And then lastly, this is level. This is, you just want to be able to look directly into the camera. There's another thing that you got to learn, like when you're on video calls, like Am I looking at the screen or if I'm looking at the camera? And something I tend to do is if I'm talking, I tend to stop looking at my screen and I look at wherever my camera is. And if I'm not talking, I look at my screen so I can see everybody talking. And that is super easy if your camera's level. Now, something you can use to kind of help you with making sure things are level is boxes. Boxes are your friend, okay? They allow you to kind of get things level. So you might want to stand. I know standing desks are really popular right now. So you can stand, but you got to make sure like your camera is level. This is actually a photo from my boys' room. You can see I'm using Operation as like as a level deal. I found too something that's kind of can be a learning curve is maybe you have a box and maybe it's not level. And then what happens is it might be level at your face, but now you're crooked. And what happens is sometimes too, some boxes, if they're not sturdy as you type, everything moves. So like, for example, if I put that on my son's bed, it would move every time I hit the keyboard. And so having something sturdy is very valuable. Use whatever you got. This is me using whatever I had, and it creates for a compelling meeting time. You can actually even see the window is in front of me. So the window naturally lights my face. And so it creates a pretty good time on the video meeting. And then next is be familiar with whatever platform you're primarily using, or if you're the leader of the group, be familiar with how to change out your preferences and your settings. This is really important. Now, I'm not asking you to be an expert of every meeting platform. I'm just saying if you're using Zoom primarily or Google Hangouts, be aware of how to change out the default mic, the speaker, and camera. Because what happens is people tend to be rushing to online groups, and once they meet, they get on, and then all of a sudden they're trying to problem solve within 30 seconds, and they don't know what they're doing. So being aware of how to change out mics and so forth on the preferences of the meeting software is a great tool. So I'm actually going to show you this. This is actually a Zoom platform. Again, this is a paid platform, and only one member needs to be a paid user. And so for me, I use it for ministry and stuff. So I use it whenever I'm meeting with somebody. I'm usually the one that has the URL that meets. But on Zoom, you can actually go to settings, and they have two tabs. They have a video and an audio tab. And I can go in there and I can change out default settings. And so what it allows me to do is that I actually have drop down options on both of these. And so on this one, I can actually change out my camera. So I can click on the FaceTime so if I'm using the FaceTime would be the built-in one, but let's say if I'm using a USB external camera, that will allow me to change out to another camera. And then on audio, this actually allows me to change out the difference between my speaker and my mic. This is a little detail. Your speaker is actually the audio. So when people are talking, where do you want that to go? And then the mic is actually what's picking up your audio. So for example, if you're using, let's say, AirPods, you might have those connected in on your Bluetooth, but maybe you want the audio to come in through the speaker to actually go through your AirPods, but you want the mic to be from your computer. And the reason why you might do that is because the mics on like a lot of Bluetooth headsets are not great usually, but the mics built into your computer usually are pretty good. So maybe you want to split that. And this is where in the settings, you can do that. They even have a button called test your speaker. So you might join in like 15 minutes early and have everything set up, and you might test the audio, and you can actually test the audio to hear the audio in your speakers. Or your headphones, and you can even test your mic. You can actually talk, and this bar will actually move to show it's working. So again, knowing your preferences and settings of changing out things is helpful, because somebody might join the call and go, hey, I can't hear each other. And maybe they realize they're defaulted to a mic that's not installed. Skype has preferences. You can go to settings, actually, the same thing. There's an audio visual video deal. Same thing. You can change out your speaker, your mic, your video. You normally have these bars. You can see if it's working. I would always encourage people to log in a couple minutes early and make sure it's working. The more people meet on that platform, the more comfortable they will become. But when you have new people part of online groups, this stuff gets in the way of good meeting times. And then lastly is Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts has like this gear icon in the upper right, where if you click on that, you can actually change out. You can change out video and so forth. The other thing about Google Hangouts that's kind of particular is it is a browser-based meeting software. And what I mean by that is like Zoom and Skype is software you download to your device. And so you just need to make sure that software is up to date. But Google Hangouts is web-based. And so what that means is that if your browser is not up to date, you can have issues. And I've actually been on video calls before on Google Hangouts and my audio will stop working. And I've realized that Chrome needs to be up to date. And so I actually have to update it and then it starts working seamlessly. And these are the type of small details. The more you're comfortable with that, the easier it is. And again, this stuff all gets in the way of a good meeting time. And then next is understanding how to mute and unmute. This is like super basic. You might go, well, people get that. No, trust me. I've been on calls with everywhere between 3 to 75 people before, and not everybody understands that they need to mute themselves. And so, when you have like a bunch of people and, a person's like talking to their spouse behind them, it gets really weird. And so most softwares like Zoom, like Skype, they have a feature called mute all. And so you actually, if you're the host of the online group, you might go, hey, by the way, you might say something in the beginning. If you're not talking, we're just gonna mute you so that we're not picking up all the other audio. And so you might say unmute. Now you might need to remind them because they might start talking and they might realize that they need to unmute. This is why in the warm up, when you have everybody go around, let them use mute and unmute and that they're aware of that button. And that leads to a very compelling time. Again, if you have under 8 people in your online group, a lot of this stuff you won't need to use, but the larger your group gets, you might need to be aware of this. But mute and unmute is very valuable to create compelling meeting times online. And then lastly, recommend your group members to download the meeting software prior to actually meeting. I've just found like if you have an online group on Friday at 7:00, you don't want the person downloading it at like 6:59 because they might have bandwidth issues. The software might not work. So if you're meeting and it's the first time they're engaging, encourage them. Hey, by the way, jump on the day before and let me know if you have any issues. Set it up. And most of these platforms, you can start a video call prior to meeting. And so you can actually test out the video. And actually, I do that all the time with Zoom. I jump on and make sure my video is looking right and all my speaker and settings are right. So encourage them to do that before meeting. And that will just allow any hiccups. So instead of having to make the whole online group work, you can figure out before time. And then, lastly, I forgot to add this. This is really important on some extra equipment. Again, this isn't stuff that you need, but if you really wanted to take your online group to the next level, again, you don't want to force this because you don't want it to have to be a budget thing. But here's some equipment you can get. One is a mic. And really what you want to type into like Amazon or whatever store that you're looking for USB mics. And so the Yeti mic is probably it's a pretty high quality like podcast recording mic. It's over $100, so it's a little expensive. But they also I used a mic that was about $50, a Samsonite mic. It always sounded like the luggage to me for some reason. But there's all sorts of affordability. You're just looking for a USB external mic, and that will just plug into your computer. Unless if you have a Mac, you probably need some kind of expensive dongle to convert it. But what I love about these is that they can allow you to put the mic in different places. So for example, if you're using the mic on your computer and you're typing, you can hear all the type sounds. But if you have a USB mic that's a little nicer, you won't hear that. And so it allows you to have a better quality conversation. And you do hear the difference between audio from your laptop from like a Yeti type of mic. But this is a great option. You don't need it, but if you wanted to kind of up your game, this is something you can explore. A camera, an external kind of webcam is super helpful. This is a Logitech camera. This is pretty basic. I think I have this exact camera. When I first bought it, it was like over $100. I think they're down like near $60 now. And it's USB. Again, I just hook it up and it allows me a couple things. It allows me to have higher quality. So you can actually see in this photo that this lens is bigger and it allows in for more light. So actually my space looks better if it's darker compared to if I was just using my camera built into my Mac. And the other thing is it actually can be mounted on a tripod if you wanted to put it somewhere else. And so the idea is you can put it, if maybe you want your computer in the shot, there's all sorts of things you do. Most of the time it has like a connection where I just hang it on the top of my computer. So it's level and it just covers my existing camera. And then the last thing is you can get a light, an external light. And this is called a ring light. Again, there's all sorts of ways to do this. I like the ring light because it's LED and it's really simple to set up. These tend to be a little expensive. They're about $100. You do not need the Yeti mic, the Logitech camera, or the ring light to be part of an online group. But this is stuff if you wanted your setup to be a little nicer. For example, if you're always meeting in the evening and maybe your apartment or your home is really dark and you don't have good lighting, this is something you could do to kind of upgrade the space. Don't make it a requirement, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. In the next session, what we're going to talk about is we're actually going to get into security. Now, for some of you might just skip this section if maybe you don't really need to worry about security because you're in a place where you can publicly worship, but I do think this is an important topic to kind of discuss. So we're going to get to that next. And so skip this or stay and just go to the next video if you want to learn more about how to have secure online groups. Now let's talk about security. And you might be going like, why is this a thing? Well, it's a thing because there are places in the world still where you cannot publicly change your faith. You might be able to publicly worship, but you cannot publicly convert. So I'm talking to a lot of Muslim countries where I've done some work with, and I've talked with a lot of pastors on the ground, and it's really hard to get somebody to come to a physical church because of different issues. And online small groups provide a great way to reach people and provide community where there would be no community. But at the same time, also those governments and there's different situations are monitoring that. So you need to go through some security, both from because you're being watched, and there's also people trying to infiltrate those things to kind of call out people and kind of get people in trouble. So you need to take security very seriously. And so I want to talk through some basic protocols that can create a very compelling and secure and safe place for people, no matter where they're at, to be part of community and engage with an online group. And so first off, when people are signing up to join an online small group and security is an issue, screen people with questions. So you might ask them a question like, how'd you hear about us? You might want to make it where everybody that's part of an online small group needs to come through a recommendation or they need to know somebody. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying you have to do that, but that might be an option. You might want to ask a question like, what do you want to get out of this online small group? Or, how long have you been following Jesus? Or how long have you been interested in Jesus? And by providing questions, you can either confirm or deny people into that group. For example, on Facebook groups, you can actually have questions when somebody requests to join a group. And you can actually deny or you can, confirm them. And the beauty part of Facebook is that if you use Facebook as kind of your base group, because that kind of makes sense for wherever you're reaching people, you can also look at the person's individual account and you can look through their photos and kind of get an idea of who they are and how interested they have been that they are in actually being part of an online group. And maybe they might have some kind of things on their wall in the past that maybe might mean that they want to actually find out who somebody is and take advantage of somebody. And security is a real issue. And in some places in the world, there are all sorts of different people trying to spot out people that are trying to break laws within countries. And so screening people is a very helpful tool. Again, your online group strategy doesn't need to reach everybody. It needs to reach people that are actually interested. And anybody that's trying to take advantage of a situation, you want to try to filter those people out. Okay, and then the next thing is to actually help with security, you might create a video course that people have to complete before actually joining the group. Now, again, as a reminder, you're only doing this is if security is a problem, is where maybe you're in a situation, for example, where you're in a country where people cannot convert their faith from. Maybe they were born into a Muslim family and they maybe want to explore what does it mean to be a Christian, but they can't do that. It's actually on their ID and they're not allowed to change. Well, maybe there's going to be people that join your online small group strategy to try to point out other people that are breaking the laws within the country. So you want to screen them with some questions, and then you also might want to have them complete a video course. And so what that might look like is you might shoot a 30-minute, 45-minute video course about what an online small group is, talk a little bit about Jesus, and make it so that people actually have to answer the questions, watch the full video, and then the idea is that they only can join an online group after they've completed the whole video. Now, people can still lie and answer questions and kind of fake certain things, but at least you're kind of getting people that are super committed, and you've made them kind of actually put some effort into this, where you're not automatically plugging them into a group with a bunch of other people. You're making them work. And if somebody's really interested in learning more about who Jesus is and being part of an online small group and exploring what community is, and they actually answer these questions and the answers look good, and they've watched this 30, 45-minute video, now you know what, that person is really motivated and is interested in being part of a community. And then you jump on a phone call or like a video call or some kind of secure type of deal, and you ask them, you just kind of hear their story. And this allows you to have more confidence that they're actually seeking. Because the idea is you want to filter out or kind of push people aside that are trying to take advantage, but you don't want to ignore the people that are seeking. And a seeker will answer the questions. A seeker will watch the video course. And after those stages, you go, you know what? I think they can be part of an online small group at that point. Another thing is to keep links private. So for example, on a Facebook group, you can actually make the group private where it's not discoverable and not public. You can actually teach your people not to share the links on other platforms. Make it so it's a private space that nobody knows about. And that's really important. And part of that is actually teaching everybody else part of the group about the importance of not sharing the URL. And so if somebody does something or shares something on accident, you're not trying to get people in trouble, but you teach them the value behind that. It's like, hey, there's a lot of people that are engaging in our online groups that are in places that, they might get in trouble from the government, and you just want to educate people. And so that might mean disciplining people by saying, hey, by the way, can you not do that? And this is why, because you could have put somebody at risk. By keeping the links private, by teaching people how to be secure, that allows people to feel ultimately more comfortable in the space, and they'll open up more. Because we want to provide a place where anybody who's interested in learning about Jesus in an experienced community to come. And we also want to get the people that are just wanting to hurt somebody out of the system and avoid them from doing this. And some of these things allow to create a very secure space for that to happen. And then next, pick the most secure meeting platform. And really what that's going to be is that's going to be the platform that makes sense for your country that you're doing ministry. And so this gets back to that strategy point, is that people are opinionated about technology. So you might go, Jay, we don't want to use Facebook. We don't trust Facebook. And I would go, that's okay. I've even found different platforms work for different age demographics. I know people that are in their 50s that would go, Facebook, I don't trust them. And there's people that are under 30 and you go, yeah, I trust Facebook. I generally, they might sell my data to make a buck, but I'm not worried about my life. And so normally countries and the people that are meeting understand what's more secure. And so understanding, encrypted platforms like an iMessenger might be better, or whatever tool. I've also found that the younger you are or the country you're coming from, they understand VPN, virtual private networks. They understand how to have secure conversations. It's like getting, through the wall in China. People know how to meet in China, and they know the more preferred platforms. And every country has better ones, worse ones. And so allow them to meet however they want to meet. And so don't say Zoom is the platform. Let them decide the platform. And so that's really important. Let them pick the most secure platform that they trust, because it's ultimately you want them to meet with their friends and you want to encourage that meeting, so they need to trust the platform. The next thing, and really the final thing on security, is don't make video required at launch. And what I mean by that is it's a big step for somebody to show their face. And they are putting, in some of these cases, and I've talked with friends and pastors and ministries doing work in some of these countries, and by showing your face, you're putting a lot on the line. So you might go, you know what, online groups, like for example, here in America, people just meet in homes. Well, in different places in the world, that is an issue. They could get in trouble. Their lives could be at risk. All sorts of things can happen. And so maybe what you do is for the first 6 weeks, or even for the first 3 months, whatever you want to do, you say, hey, by the way, when we're engaging with this online group, when you join the Skype call or whatever platform you're meeting on, no video. We're not sharing video. And you can even use a different name. They can still hear your voice, and it could still be intimate that way, but don't require video. But by doing these things, by screening people, by creating some kind of course that they complete before joining, by making the links private, and by picking the most secure platform and not requiring video at launch, you can create a more secure space. And you can have two different strategies. You can have an online group strategy that works for everywhere where publicly worshiping is available, and you can have a different one in places that people can meet. And I get emails and I have conversations with people in all sorts of places that are just, it's amazing what God is doing. And online groups is a great way to provide an expression of church, an expression of biblical community when they can't just go do it down the street. So security is really important. Some of these tips can make it a more secure meeting place. You never can remove 100% of the risk, but you can make it more safe. And some of these places, some of these protocols in place make it a better opportunity for people to engage and for your online small group ministry to be more successful. And so lastly, what I want to do is I just have some final thoughts. We spent a lot of time together talking about online groups, but I have a couple last closing thoughts, and then I'm going to pray. So first off, I want to talk about this idea of how do you actually, create a culture of online small groups. You might go, Jay, like, I don't even know how to get this going. This is an idea that you can steal. I'm giving it's free license, Creative Commons. You can kind of just take it and go. This is one idea you could do if you actually want to bring an online small group kind of vision to your campus, to your church, to your ministry. Here's one idea is that you for 10 weeks have a large small group. That might mean typically small groups are from 3 to 12 people, but maybe for this group, you might have 30 to 50 to 100 people. And the idea is that you as the leader do it yourself. So the idea is that you are trying to prove the model by launching this. And the idea is at the end of the 10 weeks, you're going to encourage them to do it individually. You're showing them the actual paradigm. And so for 10 weeks, you meet as a large small group in like a Facebook group. You could have a Facebook group, and then what you do is for 3 weeks, you promote it to your community. Either you have paid advertising where you're promoting it, or to your church or to your campus, you go, hey guys, we're gonna do an online group for 10 weeks. We're gonna go through what on earth am I here for? We're gonna use a Facebook group as kind of our home base where we're gonna interact. And for 3 weeks, you promote it. And people join the group, you screen them if you need to, you have any type of, video course if you want to like filter people out. But the idea is that for those 3 weeks, you promote it. And then what you do is after you kind of screen them and so forth, actually, I needed to say this, that in Facebook, you can actually pin a video as like an announcement. So in those 3 weeks when they join the group, let's say you confirm them, there's actually can be a video in the Facebook group where you can welcome them. Hey, welcome to this online small group. We're going to be going through this study. This is how a group's going to be. And you can shoot a quick 3-minute video about how online groups are going to work and when you're going to start, and maybe even some guidelines for engaging. But you use those 3 weeks to promote people, get people in. But once you hit your target of 30 people or 50 people, or the 3 weeks is up, you close it. And what you do is you close it and you make it private for just those people. And the idea is that it's almost like the bus is all loaded up and you're ready to go. You shut the door and you start meeting. And then for every week for the 10 weeks, you meet. And you pick a time, you're like Thursday or Wednesday or whatever time you want, and you go live. And the idea is on that meeting time, let's say it's Wednesdays at 5 o'clock, you say, we're going to meet at 5 o'clock. And what you do is you can do two things. You can put a link prior to meeting and people can watch the video study on demand individually. And you can say, hey, by the way, log in here. I've added you to the roster and watch week 1 of this video. And then on Wednesday, we're going to have a discussion. You could, if you want, you could share your screen on a Facebook Live and you can all watch it together. Again, that's probably not ideal. I would recommend everybody watching it prior. But on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock when you meet, what you say is like, okay, guys, you guys all watched week 1 and what on earth am I here for? First question is, the book started off on, it's not about me. What did you first think when you thought about that? And then you say, comment below. And so you're Facebook Living either from your phone or from your computer, and people are having conversations. And so you do this for 10 weeks. You post the link prior to watch, and then you go live on Wednesdays and people are interacting. And then during the week, the 24/7 in the Facebook group, people are just interacting with each other. You create events in the Facebook group where like you have the meeting times. And the idea is you're actually meeting as together and you're creating conversations. You're driving people to engage in the comment section. And then at the end of the 10 weeks, you pitch to them, you go, guys, you were just part of an online small group. That's what an online small group is. You meet together. And what if you did this with, instead of 30, 50 people, what if you did it with 2 or 3 other of your friends? And you had your own Facebook group and you had your own Zoom meeting. And instead of me leading the conversation, you led the conversation with your friends and you hosted a conversation. And this is an idea that you can do. Again, it takes a lot of involvement on your end early on, but what's crazy is that we did this years ago at Saddleback. We would lead the early online small groups, and now we have over 1,000 online small groups because the culture exists. People see that it's possible, but people don't understand what's possible when it's a new thought. It's like trying to describe like the idea of like a phone in your hand when you didn't know, what an iPhone was. It's just like, I remember the first time I saw an iPhone, my brother had it and he was like playing games. And I was like, why do you need that? And it's like, now it's like, I couldn't live without my phone now because it's so essential and it adds value, and you need to teach people why it's valuable. And so by having something like this where you manage it yourself and you're creating a culture of online small groups. And trust me, if you have 30 people part of that 10-week program, you're going to get at least 5 people to start their own small groups. And those 5 people become the core of the next 50 online small groups you plan and plant over the next coming weeks. But this is a great way to create a culture of online small groups. Next is really important, and we talked about this in the strategy, but I needed to bring it up again, is that you need to challenge people after a period of time, probably 12 months, to challenge them to actually go offline by hosting a group in their home. You, as the pastor, the leader, the shepherd, you are responsible for people. I mean, and the Bible is very clear on this, that as we lead people, we need to not, be shallow in how we love people. Love sometimes needs to be direct, and it needs to be laced in patience and kindness and all that, 1 Corinthians 13, but it also needs to be clear. And so sometimes that means saying, hey, you've been part of this online small group for 12 months, 18 months, and I think it's time for you to host one in your home. And you know what? I think you can do it. And online small groups is a great outreach, but because it's so easy to be part of an online group, people can kind of escape the potential of actually being part of physical community. And we never want to enable something that's not healthy. And so yes, you might serve online for a season and be part of an online group because you need to build up trust, and there's grieving, there's all sorts of things that could be happening. Or maybe you're in a season of life where your work schedule is crazy, you might have young kids, but we don't want to leave them there forever. So you, as the leader of the online small group ministry, need to help people. And that comes with checking in with your groups. And so we check in with our groups every month. And we just know we have a pulse of kind of what's happening in each group. And that means after a period of time, we encourage them to start a physical group. And at Saddleback, usually what that means is once a year, we do a big campaign where for us, a campaign is like the whole church is involved. And we'll do a small group study for 6 weeks. And so what we do, and what I've been doing for the last 6-7 years, is that I will email all of our online small groups and I'll say, hey guys, you've been part of an online small group for the past year. What if for this campaign, for the next 6 weeks only, you start a small group in your home with your family or some neighbors or maybe at your workplace, but go online to offline. And that's been really key because we will convert at least 15% of our online small groups at that season to make that 6-week commitment, because they are our leads. And this is why we have majority of our online small groups over a period of 6 to 18 months become face-to-face groups. They're a huge opportunity, but that only comes if you're willing to have that conversation and encourage them to move from an online group to a face-to-face group, and use that opportunity as a heart check to kind of encourage them to go to the next level. And then lastly, you need, this was so key, the power of story, that to launch online small groups, there's nothing better than actually having a visual of the power and the reach of online small groups. And what I want to do is I actually want to show you a story. This is actually a story that we shared, I believe it was in 2011, where it was a story of Rob's story of being part of an online small group. Now, Rob's story wasn't everybody's story, but what's interesting, at the time we had less than 100 online small groups. And people really didn't know what online small groups were then. And I flash forward to today and we have over 1,000 online small groups. And this story was really important because what we saw was people and members that were engaging with our church in all sorts of ways saw Rob engaging in community online and living out his faith online because of his situation. And they started to realize, I can do that. And so I want you to watch Rob's story, and then I'm going to come back to have some closing thoughts.
My name is Rob Trotloff. For the past 5 years, I've been living my life flat on my back. My spine is literally falling apart. If someone were to ask me 20 years ago or 30 years ago where I would be right now, being flat on my back with constant pain is not where I would have put myself.
Rob has, I think, maybe 20 different medications. He takes maybe 50 pills a day. There are days where he literally just can't do anything. He's just laying there in pain.
In the past 10 years, I've had 4 major surgeries on my spine. After the major spinal reconstruction that we underwent at the Mayo Clinic, the surgeon came in and sat down and told Chris and I that I was going to be permanently disabled, and literally that I had to get used to the fact that I would no longer be able to continue my profession as a physician.
Rob is not unfamiliar with pain. When we were growing up, we were in a car accident.
I was burned over 40% of my body. My mother and brother never did make it out of the truck and were killed in the accident. God has used these experiences, many of them painful, to prepare me for ministry in a variety of ways.
I think of the scripture, when you look and reflect on the things that he's going through, God has a way of putting it in perspective by calling it light affliction.
So suddenly I find myself limited to a 12 by 12 room and a bed. And I've gone from a active busy practice now to essentially absolute peace and quiet, and I think God has put me on a shelf. I'm done. I started watching Saddleback online services, and Pastor Rick was consistently telling us that we should be living out our Christian lives in the small group setting. So I became involved in an online small group as a host right from flat on my back. As I'm watching services, as though Pastor Rick were speaking to me, he begins to talk about the importance of sharing our faith on a daily basis. And I think, there's no way I can do this. I don't even get out of the house except to go to the doctor. And I began to pray, God, use me, and you're going to have to bring it to me because I can't move. Then a friend from Saddleback gives me a call and asks if I would be interested in working with the peace team that's going down to Rwanda. They're beginning a pilot program called telemedicine, in which doctors with difficult patients can contact U.S. physicians and ask questions about how to deliver the best care. Dr. Poli,
Yes, sir.
were her neck veins distended?
Yes. And
So through the use of technology and via Skype, I'm able to connect with the physician in Rwanda face to face as they examine and talk about a patient. Now, instead of the doctors in Rwanda seeing the peace team several times a year with doctors, now they can contact a doctor in the U.S. that's a part of the peace team anytime using the technology.
That is really the right
God's given me a wonderful second chance to be able to share my faith, to help care for patients literally around the world, using technology, being face to face with people that are out there and in the trenches, to watch how God answered those prayers. He's taken me off the shelf, dusted me off, and put me right back into action.
I would highly encourage you, coming out of Rob's stories, that after you launch online small groups, grab one life story of life change from either the beta launch, or maybe you used that 10-week program and you did it yourself and you launched. Grab one of those stories and get it on video if you can, and tell that story to everybody else. There's nothing like getting somebody that represents your church or your ministry or your campus and showing them, hey, they did it, and so you can do it. And if you do something like that in a visual of a story, it will actually get people to move from actually just being like, is that possible, to actually doing it. And that story was really important in the story of Saddleback's growth with launching online small groups. And so I want to real quick give a review because we've talked about all sorts of things. First, we talked about the value of online small groups, how it's a huge front door and it can reach all sorts of people. We got into an overview of how small groups actually work, facilitator, not teacher, not rows, but circles. We got into actually the strategy, how we actually encourage people start online like text-based, but ultimately move to audio, video, and then actually to face-to-face. I actually spent some time showing you an itinerary of what an online small group, how they welcome, they warm up, get everybody to talk. And then normally they are actually watching the video prior to meeting. And when they meet, they jump right to discussion and then they close. I showed you a photo of Joe's small group in Asia. And then we spent some time actually some basics of how to have a good video call and how those things can actually get in a way of having an effective meeting time, and lighting, audio, understanding your software, changing out preferences and settings are really key. And the more you understand that, again, you don't need to be the expert, but the more you understand that, the more you can help other people and you educate more people on that. It leads to better meeting times, and better groups leads to better, to more life change. And then we got into security, and some of you may have skipped that section. That's okay, but we talked about the importance of that there's some places in the world that can't publicly worship, and people want to take advantage of systems, and you don't want to make somebody feel unsafe. And so you want to have security measures in place to have secure meeting times. And then lastly, some final thoughts about how to create a culture of online small groups. And we just watched Rob's story. And again, I want to encourage you, capture a story in the first 3 months of launching online groups. And so launch as a beta of like, okay, we're going to do it together, and you show the model, prove the model on a small scale, document that story of success, and then tell that to your whole church community, to your ministry. And that will be the moving piece that will encourage people to actually do an online small group themselves. So what I want to do is I want to close with some prayer and spend some time praying for your campus, for your church, and for your ministry as you go on and actually launch online small groups. So let me pray. God, I thank you so much for this person or this team that spent some time together learning about online small groups. God, I do not know the vision that you have put on their heart or on their ministry, but I pray, God, that you give them fresh vision on how online small groups can be part of the way that they reach people in their community, in their country. I pray, God, that you give them a clear pathway, that you give them a story early on as they are launching online small groups that can encourage more people. That God, ultimately, we are here not to use technology just because it's fun and cool and innovative. We're here to ultimately bring about your kingdom. And online small groups are one of those ways that we can do that. God, continue to lead them, give them your godly wisdom, and I can't wait to watch stories of how online groups are used to expand their reach and ultimately bring about your goals that you want us to do. And I'm so grateful for their time and their investment. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I want to, again, thank you for spending time. If you have any questions about online small groups, maybe something else got triggered and you want to learn more, you can contact us. There's some contact information on this page. I would love to answer that. And lastly, I would love to see that story. Once you have some success, please share that, because also I get to share that with other ministries, campuses, churches about how God is using online small groups in a powerful way. Thanks so much for joining us. Can't wait to watch your stories.